Hello children and welcome to the session today. Children, we all are living in a house. This house protects us from rain, cold and heat of the sun. It also protects us from other things that can harm us, a street dog, thieves, robbers, etc. Children, every living organism needs a home to live in. And this is what we are going to discuss today in chapter number 10 of your book, Habitat of the Living. So we know that the world is full of living and non-living things. And all these things put together make up our environment. And whatever item is required by the living things is provided by this environment. There is a balance in nature. The number of each of the species has been very carefully balanced by nature so that this environment remains in a viable condition. There are two different kinds of things that constitute this environment. Number one is plants, human beings and animals. That means the living beings. These living beings form the biotic components. Bio means life. So biotic components will mean the components that have life in them. Next are the abiotic components. Abiotic components are the non-living components. But here we have to understand that these biotic components, whether it is the air, which is referred to as atmosphere, water called hydrosphere, or land, lithosphere. And additionally, there is sunlight, there are minerals and so many other things. These two components cannot live without each other. How? There is a constant interaction between biotic and non-biotic components. So, for example, plants interact with abiotic components. We all know that plants undergo photosynthesis to prepare their own food. And for this, they require air, water, sunlight and minerals, without which they will not be able to produce their own food. Now, these plants become the producers. And who depends on these producers? The consumers. Who are the consumers? Human beings and animals. That means everything is interacting with each other. So, we are also dependent on air and water because we need air to breathe, we need water to drink and to carry out many processes inside our body. In addition to the living things that we have always talked about, plants, animals and human beings, there are also microorganisms. These are known as microorganisms because they cannot be seen with the naked eye. What do you need to see them? You need a powerful microscope. And what is the importance of these microorganisms? These microorganisms decompose dead and decaying body into simpler nutrients. So, if you understand the entire cycle, the plants grow in soil, they absorb all the nutrients from this soil and they give this back to humans and animals. Now, when humans and animals die, their bodies are decomposed by decomposers and all the nutrients that were initially taken by the soil are returned to the soil. Thus, we can see that all these components in the entire working of the environment are so important. Their interaction is important and their continuity in the process of life is so important. Children, each of these components need a certain place to live, a certain temperature, rainfall, heat condition to survive. These places that different living organisms live in are known as habitat. In every habitat, we will see that there are different kinds of plants also, there are different kinds of animals also that share the same habitat. So, what is habitat? It can be defined as the home of an organism where it finds food, where it finds shelter and favorable conditions for breeding. Now, every organism can survive only in a particular kind of environment. So if I take a cactus and I put it in a place where it rains a lot, the cactus may actually not be able to thrive. Similarly, if I pick up a polar bear and put it in a desert region, it again is going to die because it is adapted to live in the ice-cold polar regions. So children, this is the entire working of habitat, and as we can see, these habitats can be classified into three important parts. The first is the aquatic habitat. Aquatic habitat is an area that is either permanently covered with water such as ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, oceans, etc. Now, living organisms that live in aquatic habitats are known as aquatic organisms. Now, these aquatic organisms, as we all know, are fish, whales, sharks, sea turtles, seaweeds, etc. This was aquatic or water. Now, let's talk about land. So, land habitat is known as terrestrial habitat. Organisms that live on land are known as terrestrial organisms. Now, based on the amount of rainfall that these areas receive, they can either be forest, grassland or deserts. Next, let's come to desert habitat. Deserts are those areas which receive very less rainfall, less than 25 centimeter annually, and their average high temperature is 45 degrees Celsius. And what kind of organisms survive here? Cactus, camel, Gila monster and kangaroo rats. A minute ago, we were discussing how it is difficult for a polar bear to survive in desert. Similarly, if I put a camel into a polar area, probably it will also not be able to bear cold. This is because all organisms have developed certain specific features that help them survive in a particular environment. And what are these features called? They are known as adaptation. What is adaptation? It is an evolutionary process of a living species to enable it to live in a particular habitat. They develop such characteristics that they can withstand the extreme conditions of their particular habitat. We are first going to understand the various adaptations in plants. Now, based on the place that they thrive in, the plant habitats can be hydrophytes, aquatic plants, mesophytes, terrestrial plants, xerophytes, desert plants, and halophytes, which are salt-tolerant plants. Let us understand hydrophytes first. A variety of plants grow in ponds and lakes. Free-floating plants like lotus and water hyacinth float freely in water. The leaves are large and flat with a waxy coating on them, making them waterproof. Submerged plants like Hydrilla velesna remain totally underwater. The leaves are narrow and ribbon-like, allowing water to pass through them without damaging them. So children, hydrophytes can be classified into free-floating water plants as we discussed, like the lotus. Then there are rooted floating leaves. Then there are also submerged water plants. Now, in case of submerged water plants, these plants have their roots inside the bottom of the water source in which they are living. So, they are water lilies, lotus, water shields, spatterdock, etc. What are the common adaptive features of hydrophytes? A water lily or lotus neither drowns in water nor gets wrinkled. So, this is waterproofing. Number two, the roots are poorly developed. The basic function of the roots is to absorb water and minerals. So, water and minerals are already there. So, the roots are not very well developed. The stems are long, slender and spongy so that they can keep floating in the water surface. And the leaves, as we've seen in the video also, they have a waterproof coating. Coming next to mesophytes. Now, mesophytes are actually the largest group of terrestrial plants. And where do we find them? We find them in areas which have got moderate to hot and humid climate. Number 1, they have very well developed roots with root hair, and they also help the plant to stand straight above the surface of earth. Then the stems are aerial. That means they help in the balancing of the plant, as you can see in case of banyan tree. The leaves are broad and thin so that they can absorb maximum sunlight for the process of photosynthesis. The leaves do not have a waxy coating so that they can trap air easily for the process of photosynthesis. Now this was where water is abundantly available. But what about xerophytes? That means the plants which are living in deserts. These plants have very, very long, deep penetrating roots that go deep under the soil to get underground water. Then the leaves are mostly reduced in case of Opuntia, as we can see in the picture also, into thorns. This is so that there is least loss of water due to transpiration also. Children, if you notice, the green structure here in Opuntia is not the leaf, it is the stem. This stem has become thick and juicy. It holds water in itself. Actually, the development of thorns is another adaptation where they save themselves because these stems have got a lot of water in them. So, the desert animals want to chew on this to get water. So, having thorns is a way of saving themselves from the different predators. Next, let us talk about halophyte. A halophyte is a plant that can survive in a lot of salt water. The best example of a halophyte would be the mangroves. Now, halophytes have got branched roots which come out of the surface of water from place to place to breathe. And they have got green, small and leathery leaves which also have water storage tissues. So, children, all these were adaptations in plants. Now, let us talk about adaptations in animals. Once again, just like plants, animals also live in water. They are called aquatic animals. Some like to live in water and on land. They are known as amphibians. Then there are animals that live in desert, in mountain region, and there are animals that can fly. Let's first talk about aquatic animals. The aquatic habitat includes oceans, seas, ponds, and lakes. Most aquatic animals like fish have a streamlined body to move easily in water. They have gills to breathe. Some animals like octopus and squids do not have a streamlined shape. They stay near the seabed and catch the prey that moves towards them. When they move in water, they make their body streamlined. Dolphins and whales are aquatic mammals that do not have gills. They breathe through nostrils or blowholes located on the upper parts of their heads. This was about animals that live in water. Now, what about animals that live both in water as well as on land? A frog, a toad, a salamander are common examples of amphibians. So, amphibians have also got a streamlined body but a long tail that helps them to change direction when they are swimming in water. They do not have scales on their body. Their skin is smooth, dry and rich in mucus. It actually helps in respiration under water. They have short neck which has no power of mobility. The frog's front pair of legs is short, the back pair of legs is long. This helps it to hop on land and the webbed feet help it to swim under water. They have a sticky tongue that can catch insects from afar. The bones of amphibians are also light and spongy so that they can easily swim in water. Children, next let us discuss about desert animals. Desert animals, because they live in dry areas, they are referred to as xerocoles. Now, what are the adaptive features? Let us consider the sheep of desert for an example. A camel. A camel, they has capacity to store water and food for many days in its hump. That is why it can survive without food and water for days together. Their skin is thick, which helps them to survive in the high temperature. They have padded feet, which helps them to walk on burning hot sand. Their body temperature changes with atmospheric temperature, because of which there is less loss of moisture from the body. Most of the desert animals are burrowing animals. That means they are more active at night. The nostrils are reduced to pinholes or with dew walls to protect them from sand. Similarly, they've got very thick eyelashes that prevents the entry of sand into their eyes. Let's get on to mountain region. What are the different adaptive features of animals in the mountains? Animals like polar bears have thick fur on their bodies to protect them from the cold. The mountain goat has got very strong hooves that help them to climb on mountain areas. All the animals living at high altitudes have long, thick hair that protects them from severe cold. These animals also have the same color as the background snow to camouflage them. Children, let's talk about aerial animals now. So we all know birds are the aerial animals. And how do they fly? Something we have been learning from our junior classes. So we know that just like aquatic animals, they also have streamlined body, which is broader in the center and thinner at the ends. The skin is covered with feathers. Now, feathers are light and elastic and they help to fly. The bones are hollow so that when the bird is flying, the body does not weigh down. The forelimbs of the birds are modified into wings, which are very, very strong. They flap their wings and fly. Birds have beaks which are used to catch insects, clean feathers, and also to make nests. So children, as we have learned in this chapter, every habitat has got a different variety of plants and animals. And unlike human beings who can use heaters and air conditioners to adapt themselves to the environment, these animals and plants have really developed those characteristics which help them to survive. So, after having learned so much about these plants and animals, time for you to get back to the questions at the back. Thank you.